My grandfather, the late Dr. Chancellor Williams, considered one of the world's foremost authorities on African history. That is my hero.
Our current president, President Barack Obama. And I say that because I'm 51 years old, the president is the same age as I am, and the fact that he came from single parent, lived in different areas, went to school, worked his way through school, got a great education like ordinary, regular people, but sets the example for this is what you can attain to if you're an African American.
When I began to think about a list that I can make of African Americans that have played a wonderful part in mainstream society, or that whose shoulders in which I stand on today, we would be here all day listing people. Marcus Garvey, Frederick Douglass, Kurt Schmoke, Harriet Tubman. The list can go on and on and on, even to the point where there are so many shoulders in which I stand on today that they're nameless. They've done so many wonderful things that I may not know their names, but we are definitely a product of their sacrifices.
Well, that's very interesting because I go out for Black History Month sometimes, and I have a little lecture I give to children and adults too. It's called Bring Your Heroes Home. And in that, I talk about various people. Of course, I mentioned Dr. King and Dorothy Height and Mary McLeod Bethune and several outstanding African Americans. But I always tell them that your hero, and the young people like to say sheroes rather than heroines, but same difference. I always tell them that hopefully your main hero or shero, that they are your mother and your father.
To pick one African American hero or heroine would be very, very hard. But one person that does come to mind would be Maya Angelou. I really think that she is a heroine of mine from a number of different aspects. I think the beauty that she was able to use when she wrote I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is really, truly marvelous, because there were some horrific things in there. And the fact that she's a poet, and I like poetry, I just think her persona is just a wonderful example.
My greatest hero was my father. My father was James W. Quander, but he was a very focused African American man. His challenge, he had very poor health. He was a childhood diabetic. He had an insulin reaction. It wasn't insulin, excuse me. Had a reaction in 1921 when he was 3 years old. Wasn't diagnosed. He was diagnosed in 1924. He was insulin dependent for 79 years. He lived to be 86. And he always said diabetes is not a death sentence, but a challenge to live. And I always add, and he lived triumphantly. So he set my personal tone as an African American. My mother was not an African American, so she was my heroine also. But she also set the tone because she was from Barbados and India, and the family values of the Caribbean were inculcated into me, as well as African American values, and we have held on to those, and that's part of the legacy of the Quander family. All the Quanders are not descended because from the same place. We're all the same family, we're all related. But we all had a mother or a father who came from some other ancestral line. So my ancestral line is traced through in the Caribbean, the strong values of family, religion, objective, and achievement, whether it be academic. Everybody didn't go to college, but there's achievement in the sense of being responsible parents, responsible to your children, responsible to your community, and contributing, doing something to give back.
When I look at people such as Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, President Obama, I think for people in my age group and probably a little older and younger, it was a sign of hope seeing him elected, that I don't think that we ever really imagined that we would see one of our kind actually being a leader of the free world. Of course, we've seen other people run as candidates, but it was always on a small scale and it was short-lived. But to see that now, I know that it's inspired other people to dream a little bigger, think a little bigger, and really have a grasp on the totality of hard work.
These days, I think, to me, modern day heroes and heroines are people like Oprah Winfrey, who's always donating and giving back to the community. Even some local politicians, just people, just African Americans, just doing the right thing, helping out others. All of them fit into that category for me.
Well, my African American heroine, is actually Mae Jemison. She's known for being the first black woman in space. But not many people know that she was also a dancer for Alvin Ailey. And I idolize her because she never let herself or anyone else get in the way of what she wanted to do with her life. She was always, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. She didn't decide that she had to pick one career plan and just stick with it forever. She decided that if it made her happy, she was going to do it. And that's how I want to live my life.
My African American heroes, I would have to say one of them would be Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, and Rosa Parks. Just a few of the many.
I think I have a lot of African American heroes. Definitely the people who, back in the day helped free the slaves. Not all of them are even black, like Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, all of those people that we learned about in the history books. But there are a lot of modern day ones too who just paved the way for black people in the struggles that we're still having to get over. Like Oprah is definitely someone in black history that, made her mark and that I definitely admire. And that's somebody that's very recent. But there, Martin Luther King, of course. And then Barack Obama is late as him, he's the first black president. The fact that in 2013 we're still, in awe that we have a black president, and it should be just a usual thing at this point, but he was the first to do it. So he's definitely one of my heroes. Because after him, it's like he was the first to do it, so he's paving the way for everybody else. It's like every little black boy can say, you know what, I can be president. I'm not hindered by the color of my skin.
I don't really have just one. My African American heroes are the people that have struggled and have gained power and knowledge by gaining power and knowledge, not by sleeping their way to the top or by trickery, having somebody on their team and then going behind their back and talking bad about them. My Black history heroines are just strong people, strong women that actually have a word and speak their word and not afraid to say what's on their mind. I love men who know how to be men and who know how to treat their women as such. I don't just have just one. I've just had many.
One of them will be Martin Luther King. Growing up, looking at his vision, remembering the album cover that my mom had, all I remember is 1965. I think that was the March on DC. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I believe I remember a album cover with blue and white or something like that, and a whole lot of people on the March of Washington. But getting older and studying history, you listen to what he said. He was sort of like a prophet, and his vision was positive, and it was for equality, everybody coming together. And it's hard to imagine back in the day that there was such separation, and we look at today the growth that we have, or how his vision has really come to pass.
Where I grew up, we didn't learn about any African American heroes. And then when I came here to the Washington, D.C. area, I was so surprised, like the schools like H.D. Woodson and Maya Angelou. And I mean, there's a lot of heroes around, and we just don't talk about them.
My modern day hero is definitely Barack Obama, the President of the United States. Who would ever believe that we would have a black man in control of the free world? Yeah, go Barack.
As far as an African American hero or heroine, I would say it would be my parents.
Of course, Oprah. I just think What I like about Oprah is that when